Welcome to Ronan's Rant.
Today I'm joined by Ronan Mahon, who currently works as Head of Sales of recent startup Flipdish. Along with this, he also is Director at Tiny Islands, in which he carries out multiple roles within the business and events. With this also, he is a past pupil of St. Michael's College. And to kick it all off, the usual, how are you today, Ronan?
Doing very well today. Thanks very much for having me on the show, Richie.
No worries, you're welcome back to your humble old school.
Old school. It has changed a little bit though. There's a few more buildings, a couple more rooms in here now as well, which is good to see.
And on that subject, what would your memories of your school days be? Like, what would be the ones that would pop out to you?
Yeah, lots of, I suppose, fond memories of St. Michael's. I suppose rugby was, and as I've heard a lot of people say, core to one of the memories that I have here, having played, from the age of 8 up until last year, when I unfortunately broke my back playing rugby over in Australia. So I decided at the age of 34 it was time to retire from rugby, but I had a good stint. But yeah, lots of fond memories, whether it be the underage teams, the under-13s, JCT, SCT, lots of great memories playing rugby in Michael's, and lots of lessons learned from rugby and what we were taught by the coaches about team working and practice, and a lot of lessons that I was able to take into my future careers as well.
Super. And on the more academic side of things, would you consider yourself or look back on yourself and see yourself as a role model student, or were you kind of a bit of a messer? Did you struggle academically? Were you strong?
So it's a good question, because a lot of the subjects that I studied, I didn't have a huge amount of interest in them.
Yeah.
And I think I probably would have been considered a good student. I was probably sort of like B's and A's and stuff like that the whole way through. But ironically, the reason I studied was because I was a little bit of a messer, but I realised there was a bit of smoke and mirrors. If you sort of did well at rugby and your grades were up, nobody sort of questioned you. So I was probably able to get away with a few things because people just thought I was sort of a good student. But I wasn't say I was a complete mess or anything like that. I think the teachers probably would have thought I was quite good. But there was a few bold things I did that I got away with, because everyone just thought I was, sure, he's playing rugby and he's doing well in school, so we'll leave him alone,
Swept it under the carpet.
A little bit, yeah.
Well, that's fair enough. And once you get through, obviously, the adventure of St. Michael's College as a student, did you go straight into college, or where did you go after 6th year in the Leaving Cert?
Yeah, so straight into college. So I remember when I was filling out the CAO forms, and I was thinking, do you know what, I'd love to do something a little bit different. Everyone's going to UCD or Trinity, and I'd actually filled out the CAO to do a communications course in DCU. And at the last minute, having sat down and chatting to my dad, I sort of changed my mind and went the more traditional path with commerce in UCD.
Up Nutley Lane.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a stroll up the road, so nice and easy. But one of the things I did do was I tacked Spanish onto that as well. So I did commerce and Spanish, which was fantastic because it gave me the opportunity to do an Erasmus. Okay. It was actually part of the course, so I did have to spend a year in Madrid. Funny enough, though, about UCD, we arrived into commerce and Spanish day one, and there was 15 people on the course in UCD. Out of those 15, 12 were girls and 3 were guys, and the 2 guys were Zach Deasy and Michael Mitchell from St. Michael's the same year. So 3 Michael's guys all gotten into this one course that was up in UCD, so that was pretty funny when we all arrived in.
Must have been a bit like a zoo, going from an all-boys school and then suddenly being 3 guys on your own.
Wham, bam. Yeah, exactly. It was a bit. Yeah, it took a bit of getting used to. It wasn't the same sort of like slagging or banter that you're used to in an all-boys school. You have to be a little bit more polite and formal, but I guess that comes with growing up as well.
Fair enough. And you mentioned there that you studied Spanish, and on the last podcast I had with Joe, he was speaking about how he learned French at an early age. And it came really helpful in his latter years to go abroad and work abroad in France. Like how important did you think it was actually to learn Spanish as a second language? And if so, did it come in handy in future years when you were looking for jobs or other experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's hugely important to learn a second language because it gives you the option to travel or work abroad. I actually have some Spanish family, so my auntie is married to a Spanish man and all my cousins are Spanish. So I probably learnt more Spanish in 2 weeks in Spain on my Erasmus when I went to visit my cousins, and they live in this really small town in Spain, but they have this big festival on every year, wine festival. So you've probably come across the running of the bulls of the Tomato Festival.
Yeah.
This is like a lesser known festival entirely based on drinking wine and having a big wine fight, and it's a 2-week festival with it's basically like a mini electric picnic for 2 weeks. Except when I went there, nobody in the town really spoke English, maybe 1 or 2 people. So you had absolutely no choice but to speak Spanish, which was fantastic because you just learn it. And, you know, you've had a few vinos every day as well, so the confidence is up and you're not too worried about making a mistake. And then more recently, before coming back to Ireland after almost 10 years in Australia, I had travelled through South America, and that was very handy in obviously the Spanish-speaking territories because it was easy to get around, organise transport, book a tour, all that sort of stuff. So I was, I suppose, a little bit of a pillar for a lot of people I met along the way to help them get around and travel. So highly beneficial. And I guess if you can learn it from a young age, it's going to help you in your, leaving cert as well, have like a subject almost ticked off the list before you go. So I guess probably a lot of parents now, you see them getting their kids learning Irish from a young age or another language with maybe an au pair or someone looking after the kids. So yeah, anyone who wants to learn a language, get on board and definitely try and travel or study abroad because it just opens your eyes to a whole world of new experiences.
And would you be fluent or would you be close to our 50-50?
Right now, I'd be good.
Yeah.
2 pints, I'd say I was very good. So it comes back to me. Like I wouldn't be perfect, but I could definitely hold my own in a conversation. Like I've helped people with business negotiations in Spanish as well.
Okay.
It hasn't been perfect, but I think the key thing for me is I'm not really worried about making a mistake when I'm speaking a language. My key concern is communication and the fact that the other person understands me. It doesn't need to be grammatically perfect for me when I'm speaking another language, but the important thing is communication.
Yeah. Okay. And it said there that once you finished your degree in UCD that you went abroad to Australia. And basically, how did that come about, or basically why did you make the decision to move?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was sort of based on the Erasmus. Now I didn't go directly over to Australia. Okay. What I did was when I finished UCD, it was quite interesting because it's probably changed quite a lot now, but back in the day, there was sort of a prescribed path where, you go to St. Michael's, you try and do well in your leaving cert, you head to UCD or Trinity, usually a focus on finance or law or medicine. They'd be the traditional paths. I did commerce, so it was sort of broad, I suppose, business subjects. Really liked studying business here with Dave Wilson as well. Really enjoyed his class. But at the end of that, I didn't quite feel like I had found the right path. So I actually got into real estate and I was an estate agent here in Dublin for 2 years working with Hamilton Osborne King, which was then bought by Savills.
Okay.
And that was my, I suppose, first real introduction into the world of sales. And sales, I found in Ireland when I left college, was a little bit of a dirty word. It didn't matter what you were selling. You were still sort of considered a used car salesman. That was sort of the general attitude. I think that's changed a huge amount, what with the amount of technology companies who are based here in Dublin now, where sales is considered a proper full-time career and something to be proud of. But did that for 2 years. That was an absolutely fantastic learning experience about the psychology of sales, because I was working selling houses worth $500,000 up to, I think, 1.3 million was the highest one I sold. And when I left college, I looked about 12 years old as well. So, dealing with people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s and above who essentially just saw a child in front of them trying to sell them like $1 million property was quite a challenge. So I really had to start learning about the psychology of people and how to connect with individuals so that you could really take the sale away from the sale and really provide a solution to the needs of the person who was in front of you. And then with that knowledge, I decided, you know what, I don't feel like I'm ready just to completely 100% immerse myself in the workforce. I wouldn't mind doing a little bit of traveling, wouldn't mind doing a little bit of study as well. So a friend of mine, again, another Michael's guy, had studied in Australia for a year and recommended a university over there, University of New South Wales. And they had quite a prestigious marketing course that was over there that I really wanted to study to back up my sales knowledge. I didn't qualify for the course, so I may have doctored my CV a little bit when I sent it over, just to say I had more experience in the field of marketing than I actually did. And it was eventually accepted, which was great. But then I got to the course and I was one of the youngest people on the course, and probably one of the least experienced. But what was absolutely fantastic was a lot of people on the course who were doing their masters in Australia were in their 40s, 50s and above. And they had a wealth of knowledge of the marketing space. And I probably learnt more from those people than I did from the actual course material itself. And I ended up getting quite good marks in the course over there as well, because I was really, really interested. And I got to study living by the beach. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, it sounds like you landed not so much on your feet, but it was a lucky enough thing that not so much that you faked it till you made it, but the fact that there was so many more experienced people that it just seemed like the transition from being a worker to obviously being a real pro at what you do. It seemed almost like that was the perfect opportunity and the perfect place for you to be in.
Oh, no, I think you're right. I definitely faked it till I baked it. I think that's something, you can do, not with everything. It's not like the movie Catch Me If You Can. I'm not going to go out and pretend to be a doctor or a lawyer. Yeah. But it's something you can do if you've got the belief in yourself to be able to understand what's possible, and you know that there's a path and a process to achieve what you want to do. Just set yourself the goal of doing that and then learn how to do it along the way. If you can do 20, 30, 40% of something, you can probably do the rest. You just need to learn it. So a little bit of faking it till you make it definitely works. So I wouldn't obviously tell people to be going out and
but don't
falsifying stuff.
It.
But have confidence in yourself and believe that you can actually achieve the things you want to.
And what shocked you initially? Because on other the old episodes, say with even Tom or even say with Peter, pretty much all of them, when they went abroad, whether it was to places in Europe, the United States, Australia, what kind of shocked you the most that once you left, obviously, the Irish culture behind you for a few years, what basically shocked you the most about Australia as a country?
I think what shocked me the most initially was my change in mindset. So I had left Dublin at the age of about, 24 when I left. And a lot of people here were working for a couple of years. They're starting to get mortgages, buy houses. And there was a huge amount of pressure to almost settle down or get your foot in the property ladder and stuff like that. And even though I was working in real estate, I didn't buy anything at the time. And that was definitely a good decision in hindsight, given what happened to the market over here. But those pressures that existed in Irish society didn't seem to exist at all when I went over to Australia. So that was a very freeing experience, because once I got my head around that, I didn't feel shackled down by the prescription of a Dublin life, which is, your school, college, job, house, married, kids and stuff like that. And I think that was beneficial for me, because it allowed me to pursue other things I probably wouldn't have had I continued along that path in Ireland. And that's why I always encourage people to maybe take a trip abroad or a year out before you go to college or something like that, and just try something new, so it opens your eyes up to different experiences, and you might actually find something that you're passionate about that you can apply your skills to as well.
Okay. And what were your highlights? Because it says here that you were there for several years. What were your highlights from a job point of view, or any experiences you had at the time? Yeah. Basically, what were the highlights of your time in Australia, and what did you learn from them?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a couple of different highlights. I worked with a number of startups over in Australia, which was great to learn that environment. Some of them being music startups. So my first job over there was working with a ticketing technology company. So I arrived over and got to study during the week, work part-time for this company, and then every weekend I was at a music festival. So that was a great highlight when you're going traveling at the start. I also got the opportunity to work with some big record labels as well in sales roles, helping them establish their digital technologies and platforms. So we actually rolled out the first music streaming service in Australia for Samsung with EMI Music. So that was a huge highlight. And then getting to work for an organization like LinkedIn as well. That was absolutely fantastic because their sales training and the culture in a company like that is very different than anything I'd experienced beforehand. And I learned so much there. And again, one thing I liked about that, it was very similar to my marketing course in the sense that there was so many good people working in that organization that you learn from them. And you always sort of like push yourself to the next level.
And sorry to interrupt, but what role, what was your job title when you worked with LinkedIn?
With LinkedIn, I was an account executive for Talent Solutions, so effectively selling their recruitment license, which gives you access to the entire LinkedIn database. Okay. So we would work with like managing directors, HR directors, and help them implement recruitment technology. So that was a sales role again. So I've always worked, apart from real estate, I've always worked with like technology, a lot of startups, a lot of sales. So those are some of the sales highlights. But another highlight that I really enjoyed was when I set up an events company. It was quite funny how it started because I'd been doing quite a bit of DJing over in Sydney, and I was out on a date, and it was a girl I quite fancied, and we'd gone out like paddleboarding one day, and there was this little venue, they call them RSLs, they're services leagues for retired soldiers and people from the military, and had this absolutely amazing deck looking out over Rose Bay, and we were just having a drink there afterwards, and I sort of said, look, this place would be so great to put on like a little mini festival, and you could do this and you could do that, and the girl I was there with, Zara, she just said, well, why don't you? And I was like trying to impress her, so like, yeah, okay, cool. So I went up and checked with the girl at reception to see if they had any dates available, and they only had one Saturday available during the summer, and it was the same Saturday that there were 3 really big music festivals on in or around Sydney, so the competition was going to be pretty huge, but I just booked it anyway and just said, right, I'll figure out how to do this. So conveniently for me, my brother John, he has worked in the music and events industry for years. So he was one of the guys that started the Bernard Shaw pub in town with Body Tonic. So he had a wealth of experience. So I actually, a couple of weeks later, I was in Vietnam. So my family flew in from all around the world. And I sat down with my brother for about 3 hours and I just said, look, I've got this event coming up, I've booked the venue, what do I need to do? And just had a pen and paper and notepad and literally just took out all his tips that he had from ticketing, marketing, setup on the day, security, the works, and just implemented everything he said. And then out of the back of that was born Tiny Islands, which you mentioned earlier on. So that is, I suppose, an event company and DJing company as well. But from that, like I ended up organizing multiple events as well. So I did, I suppose, a big festival for the guys at Boost Mobile over in Australia, and we ended up like shooting a big music video. So you can see that on the tinyislandsevents.com website as well. Organized corporate Christmas parties for LinkedIn. Did a lot of fitness festivals as well with a friend of mine, Libby, who's quite a big celebrity personal trainer over in Australia. And I suppose, as I don't know if it was mentioned earlier on, but I do a lot of personal training as well. Again, that's off the back of rugby, doing weights in here with Mr. Hartnett, I think when I was 13 back in the day, and you know, progressing through. So I started then matching music to fitness, and I do since I've moved back, I've started doing some fitness and music events in Ireland as well. Okay. So a couple of different highlights from events and music to working with some great organisation and sales. But again, being in another country, it was just all these opportunities I saw that I probably wouldn't have seen if I'd stayed here. But coming back to Ireland now, it's a very different country. And I see that there are all these opportunities here, but my eyes are open to them at this stage.
Okay, sweet. Summed that up perfectly, pretty much.
Good. Thank you.
No worries. To touch on it there, as like even as you mentioned, that's something you currently do. Like, what got you into DJing? Because traditionally, I'm trying to think of, it's not exactly the mainstream version of what most people want to do. They want to pick up a guitar, they want to do drums. So what basically made you kind of go, actually, I want to learn how to be a DJ. I actually want to make music that is DJ rather than picking up guitar and trying to play an Ed Sheeran song.
Yeah, okay. So it is a little bit different, all right. But as I mentioned, my brother John, he has been a DJ since he was 15. He got a set of Technics for his junior cert once he got his results. Not quite sure he deserved the Technics, but he got them anyway, and it's led to a great career for him. So that really got me interested in the music scene. And it was very different than what people were listening at the time. Like, he was playing a lot of house music, which at the time in the mid-90s was pretty much exclusively reserved for the gay scene in Dublin. It hadn't progressed into mainstream. And the guys were trying to bring this genre of music to the forefront of what parties are. And they really helped to escalate that in the Dublin scene with the likes of Body Tonic. I remember they did the first Electric Picnic as well. I was just back in Spain, and the next day was down at the first Electric Picnic. Ended up like hanging out with Grandmaster Flash and Arrested Development and all that sort of stuff. So I was involved in the scene from the young age. Also, I grew up on Lansdowne Road as well, opposite the stadium. People call it the Aviva now, but I can't get past calling it Lansdowne Road. It does. So like when I was a kid, we used to like build stages for Michael Jackson and all the big stars that were performing in Lansdowne. So music was always a part of my life. But I think I was about 28 or 29 over in Australia, and I was in a bar down in Melbourne, and I was like, the DJ there was just terrible. I was like, I literally could definitely do this better. And the next day I just ordered a small MIDI controller and started to teach myself how to DJ. Again, chatted to my brother about it as well, and eventually started to get gigs. Like, just went out there and promoted myself. Again, probably told people I was a better DJ than I actually was, but it worked. You got the gigs. And I started doing it that way. So yeah, it's not your traditional path, but I think a lot of us these days, we go to bars and nightclubs, we mightn't realise, but there is a DJ there that's trying to control the atmosphere of the bar, get people dancing, get people to stay. And the type of DJing I do, house music is one of my preferred genres, but I like to do multi-genre mixing as well. So a lot of people can come to my parties and enjoy them because there'll be songs that they recognise. There might be a remix of them to actually work with the set that I'm playing, but they'll be quite enjoyable. And later on in the year, if there's any Michael students or ex-students interested, I'm actually going to be running a DJ competition as well. So effectively what we're going to do, I'm just speaking to a couple of different training colleges for DJs, is no experience necessary. You get 6 weeks of DJ training, so 1 day every weekend, and at the end you should be versed enough to be able to play a set. We're hoping to have between 20 and 30 finalists, and everyone's going to get a 15 to 20 minute set, and then we're going to pick a winner. And then we're looking to do prizes for the winners of sets at different events and festivals and stuff like that. So I'll keep you posted on that one. That'll be happening later on in the year, probably around October. So we'll be doing promo in September for that. And getting the competition up and running October, and probably November will be the finals. So if anyone's interested in that, you can go on to the tinyislandsevents.com and register on the website. I don't have the competition details up there, but just shoot me an email and I'll keep you posted when that's coming up.
Super. Yeah. No, I was thinking it might clash with the Leaving Cert and Junior Cert, but the fact it doesn't, hopefully we get plenty of applicants. But
absolutely,
I'll make sure to link that. And then touching on that, you have your experiences in Australia, and then like you come back to Ireland, obviously, which where we are now. What was the well, it's raining, so
we're definitely in Ireland. Yeah, we're back. Yeah.
And what made you come back, or basically what was the decision or the moment where you're like, okay, it's time to go back to Ireland?
Yeah, well, I'd been thinking about coming back to Ireland for quite a number of years. My intention when I left wasn't to be out of the country for a decade. It was to go for 1 or 2 years. But obviously things change. I think the economy being a bad factor back here at the time meant I stayed over there. But the decision was I had just finished up with one role. I wasn't seeing anyone at the time as well. So I think being single is a lot easier to move around than having a wife or kids and a family and stuff like that. So I decided, do you know what? I'd been invited to DJ in Bali at a friend's wedding, and then 2 weddings in Ireland that were all a few weeks apart. So I finished up one role and I decided, right, I'm going to give Ireland a try, I'm going to move back. But I had the luxury of being able to go to Bali first, then flew to Ireland, then flew to Argentina, and then travelled all my way up South America. Skipped a little bit of Central America, went up to New York to see my brother do the New York Marathon, and then to visit my sister in Toronto. Back to New York for the McGregor fight, and then back down to Colombia for a few weeks holiday, and then back to Ireland. So that was
taking the long way home.
Literally the most expensive non-planned trip around the world ever, but thoroughly enjoyed myself and would do it all over again. So, but yeah, the decision really was, I had the opportunity. I was single, so I wasn't tied down. There was a role finished up. And I thought, if I don't do it now, that's it. I'm not doing it. I'm not coming back from Australia. And I really wanted to give Ireland a go because I've been hearing so many positive things about what's happening in the country. Personally, I don't feel like I'm grounded or rooted or fixed anywhere. I could move back to Australia in 10 years' time. You know, I've got my passport and all that sort of stuff now. I want to give Ireland extended stay and set up a few businesses and continue to grow the flip dish business as well, which is going absolutely fantastically at the moment. So if there's any investors out there who are interested, our revenues are growing at over 20% month on month, which is a very positive sign. So yeah, I want to work with the guys, expand that out, grow that business, and then continue to work on my sort of music and then fitness career as well.
And is it your personal preference to work several jobs at once, or is it just pretty much a case of, they just kind of just popped up and you were like, okay, I'll take them? Or was it just, I want to have as many possible opportunities and jobs at once?
So that's a really interesting question. So on one hand, it's partly to do with my personality. Like, I've got way too much energy and I can't sit still, so I love working all the time. And on the other hand, I remember in 2008 over in Australia, I was due to get a visa with one company, but they'd been bought by another. I wasn't able to get that visa, so I had to finish up in the role that I was in with that company. I had a 10 grand student loan as well that I needed to pay back to the bank. I had no job. I was going to get kicked out of the country if I didn't get a visa, and I had to live off a credit card for probably about a month and a half or something like that until I got myself all sorted out. So you can see, like, you're paying your rent, your food, everything, your bills are mounting up. You still got a loan to pay off. So I decided I wanted to have additional revenue streams outside of working in sales. And that's when I started thinking about doing personal training as well, and did my course. I think I didn't do my course for another couple of years till about 2012, but it was in the back of my mind that I'd love to do other things that could generate revenue should I fall in hard times on a sales role. But what I've noticed in sales is there seem to be more sales jobs on when an economy is down, because companies need people to sell stuff. So it's actually quite convenient. But yeah, as I said, it's part of my personality as well. Like, I love to work. Like, I'm up in the morning pretty early. I actually get up a little bit later over in Ireland, like only 7 o'clock. Like in Australia, I was up at 5:30 in the morning. Used to go down to the beach and do training. Then I go back up home, do a bit of work beforehand, just shoot into my job where I was working at the time, and then come home, play rugby, and then do a bit of work on the weekends, organising events or DJing and stuff like that, and do a bit of personal training. That was great. Actually, used to do PT down in Bondi Beach. So you get up in the morning 2-3 days a week. You're up at like 5:30, down there for 6, training 30 or 40 people on the beach. It's very different than the class I have in Sandymount Strand at the moment now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so partly personality and partly just give myself protection.
Okay, great. And you mentioned flip dish there, and I want to kind of dive into that a bit more. It's like, what does that, is that, from what I understand, that's a food ordering app.
Yeah.
And basically, how does it work? What is its kind of selling points?
Well, one of the things I love about Flip Dish is how it started. So it was started by two brothers from St. Michael's, Conor McCarthy and James McCarthy. Conor and James, they're both, I suppose, serial entrepreneurs. They've had multiple really successful businesses. One of the ones the Michaels guys might know is like the Christmas shirt company, which are those like cheesy Christmas shirts that people wear around town. That you have the likes of Cillian Murphy or Killian Scott wearing and stuff like that. And so he had started that business. Conor had some online businesses associated with poker playing as well that were just really clever businesses. And Connor's a tech guy, so he's the developer, and he was really frustrated with the food ordering. services that are out there. So you've got like plenty of ones like Just Eat and Deliveroo, but he was just disgusted with the user experiences of ordering on mobile, because a lot of these platforms are web-based and they haven't really thought about the mobile user experience. They've just translated what they had on web into mobile. So Connor said, I can do better. And he went out and built an ordering app for restaurants. And in his mind, he thought maybe I'll do an aggregation service like Just Eat and have all the restaurants on there. But he took it out to a couple of restaurants, himself and James, and they showed it to the owners and managers, and they were like, this is brilliant. Do you know what we would love? Rather than another aggregation service, we would actually love to have our own app for our restaurants, so we can own the relationship between the restaurant and the consumers. So when Connor had decided to create something that was good for customers like you and me ordering food, what he'd actually done was gone and created a really powerful mobile-first marketing platform for restaurants. And that's had a huge impact on a lot of businesses. And we can see some really interesting trends happening in the market at the moment. So I sat down with a client yesterday who had decided that Flipdish wasn't right for them. Yeah. And I wanted to sit down and sort of explain why it was going to be beneficial for their business based on consumer trends. So the way the business operates is we want to be really close to our clients. So every couple of days, we're all on call. So you might call the customer service line and you might get through to the CEO, you might get through to me, you might get through the customer support, you might get through to one of the tech guys. We just want to get an understanding of customers and clients. So I'm actually on call tonight after this. Like I said, keep working all the time. But I was sitting at home, and I'll ask you the same question. So I was sitting at home on order support, watching all of the orders come through from the hundreds of restaurants that we power around Ireland, the UK, and the Middle East. And I was seeing something that this time last year I wouldn't have expected. So 10, 11 o'clock at night, what sort of restaurants or what sort of orders would you assume would be coming through to us?
I would say mostly... Well, at that time of night, people are obviously looking for dinner, so like pizzas, I don't know, chips, burgers, stuff like that, all the late night type foods, rather than maybe a lovely steak.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I would have assumed. And that's the assumption that the business I was speaking to yesterday had as well, that it was going to be takeaway and fast food. So some of the highest order volumes that we get during the week at the moment are for the likes of Chopped, the salad house, Koku, Sprout, and it's breakfast orders and lunchtime orders, because people are so time short and so health conscious that they're going to order a nice healthy porridge and a salad for lunch, and they're going to come into the store at 8:30 and they're going to collect it, and they don't want to queue. They also don't want to waste their lunchtime standing in a queue to pick up something healthy. So it's this whole new trend in Ireland and around the world as well. It probably happened in Australia a couple of years ago, where people got just that little bit more health conscious. So it's a huge trend. So that's when I sat down with the guys yesterday. They're like, okay, well, this actually makes sense for our business and the type of food that we have. And it gives them the opportunity to build a database of customers. We've got a whole heap of marketing solutions on the back end of Flipdish as well that allows restaurants to, I suppose, build that relationship, retarget their consumers with messaging as well, and get them to sort of come back for repeat purchase and repeat orders. So yeah, absolutely great platform for restaurants. But interestingly enough, we have there's an Irish guy called Pierce who owns a butcher over in the United Arab Emirates, and he's a really fantastic customer of ours. Like we just didn't think this. He contacted us, said, "Look, I've got this butcher over here. People want to get stuff delivered. I need an app," and it's just working absolutely phenomenally over there as well. So we're starting to think what sort of non-traditional businesses we can work with as well. And I love the fact that Connor and James, the founders, they aren't strict and reserved on who they want to target. They're happy enough to look at what's going to be good for our business, what's going to be good for our clients as well. So yeah, if there's any, I know we have been speaking to Tom at Bunsen about getting an app. He hasn't done it yet, but maybe when he hears the podcast, he'll change his mind.
No, that is very interesting, because I actually have never actually thought of actually ordering ahead a day. Basically, everything seems to be, I want it now, etc. But to have people basically getting on their phones, ordering in their breakfast or lunch, I never really thought of it that way. So that is definitely interesting.
Well, that's it. The stores are printing money at night, effectively. You know? So people are like sitting there in bed, they're setting their alarm to get up in the morning to go to the gym or whatever, and they go, right, I'm going to order my breakfast straight after the gym, because they're just so time poor between like getting up, getting to work, having food and stuff like that. So yeah, it's great to see for a lot of the health food stores. Obviously, we're still getting high volumes of takeaways as well, but it's just a new trend that's happening in the marketplace.
Cool. And with obviously having a phone-based app being part of obviously Flipdish, what would be the biggest challenge that would come about that? Would it be competition? Would it be actually setting up an app that's easy to use? In your opinion, basically, what would be the biggest challenge that comes hand in hand with setting up a phone app?
I think the biggest challenge initially was getting an understanding of what was going to work for the consumer and what was going to work for the client. And then once the guys had actually developed a solution or a platform that was going to be effective for businesses and consumers, it was education and educating the market on why it's beneficial to actually have your own app and to own the relationship with your customers. So if you're on a platform like Just Eat, for example, which I still think is a great platform for customer acquisition. I think the Just Eat guys are just behind us here in Michael's, aren't they? So yeah, it's a great platform for customer acquisition because they spend a whole heap of money on marketing to educate the likes of you and me that this platform exists and you can order food on there. So we go on, we order food, but I don't know if have you ordered off Just Eat beforehand?
I have a few times, yeah.
A few times. So I think when you go onto the app now, like let's say I wanted to order from Indie Spice restaurant, for example, I might jump onto Just Eat and in my head, I was going to order from Indie Spice, but now I get on and I select Indian as my cuisine. And I'm looking and there's 5 promotions on, 20% off here or a sponsored ad by another restaurant there. All of a sudden I get distracted and I might go into a different restaurant and end up ordering off them because it was 20%. So there's a couple of things happening there. One, Just Eat is turning into a bit of a marketplace. So it's like we're walking down like the strip in Tenerife and you got all these guys waving flyers trying to get you into their bar. And 2, the restaurant is potentially missing out on their loyal customers. So what we're saying is, look, definitely still use the likes of Just Eat for customer acquisition, but once they've ordered once, why not move them or migrate them onto your own platform? Especially if you know they're a top customer who orders 3, 4, 5 times, why risk them picking someone else when you can actually have them on your own app and build a relationship with them? So I think educating the market that we're not just an ordering solution, but we're a marketing platform is key. So like Just Eat is for customer acquisition, but we really focus on loyalty and retention. And I think loyalty and retention is key to any business's growth. Acquisition is usually the hard part, but keeping customers on there is key to business growth because they're going to order more, their basket size is going to increase. But you do run the risk of those people not coming back to you if you're just using a platform or an aggregator like Marvin or Just Eat or Deliveroo to get your customer coming back. So those are the solutions we're trying to solve for clients.
Okay, yeah. Well, that all makes sense in my head anyway.
Yeah. Well, if you've got a restaurant opening up, I know a guy can get you a great app. So.
And then just to briefly touch on Tiny Islands is another company in which you're heavily involved in. Mm-hmm. But like, what's just before we go into that in a bit more detail, what's already struck me, and it was the exact same with Tom Gleeson when I came on talking about the simplicity of a burger and doing it right. Mm-hmm. Like whether it's you getting into DJing and setting up certain festivals, or whether it's you being involved in a company that sets up an app, it's all born out of frustration of what's already on offer. Yeah. And do you think, like, I'm trying to get a good question out of what I'm trying to say here, but it seems that is a very common trend, and that frustration does tend to be the kind of switch in someone's brain for kind of, I can actually do better than this, so therefore I'm going to actually just get my entrepreneur kind of blood going and set up a startup. But do you think like that is a good way to follow, kind of, as in once you're frustrated about something, go ahead, try fix it, try to make something better?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I see where you're coming from. I think that's a really good way to do it, because if you're frustrated about something, there's a little bit of a fire burning inside you to create a solution, and that's going to keep driving you to do something better. I think a lot of businesses develop out of people's frustrations with the way food is served or the quality of food on offer in Tom's case. So it keeps you motivated and it keeps you passionate about it. I've started quite a few businesses over in Australia that have failed, and I think that's key as well. And what I've noticed is the ones that have failed, like e-commerce businesses and stuff like that, I've started, on paper, they've had the right elements. They've been working with the right people, but they were businesses designed for me just to make money. And sometimes they made money, but I just wasn't interested, so they fell by the wayside. But when you actually have something like that that's sort of burning inside you, whether it's a passion or a desire to solve a problem, you're more likely to stay focused on that. So I think it's a great inspiration for people to think, okay, this is a problem I'd like to solve. Can I actually generate a business out of that? It's one way to look at it. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, interesting. And onto Tiny Islands. Basically, what is the goal of that company?
Yeah. So Tiny Islands has a couple of different focuses.
Yeah.
So as a brand, like my DJ name ended up being DJ Tiny Islands because it was just easy because the company was called that. So one of the things I like doing is actually creating experiences that are different from what's available in the marketplace. So the events I used to run in Sydney were unique locations. So like the Rose Bay one that like I think only 3 people who attended that party had ever been there before. They'd never seen the location. So unique location. There's always a theme as well. So like the first one, like everyone turned up in fancy dress. It wasn't a requirement, but everyone just turned up in fancy dress, and it just made the atmosphere so much better. And it's got to be hassle free as well. So it's not hard to get to, or there's easy transportation. Essentially, it's just about creating a really memorable experience or different cultural events. I love doing collaborations with creative people in Australia and Ireland. So there's that from the, I suppose, the fun side of things. The other goal of the business is fitness events as well. So one event that I've created since I've been back, I got back last December, was Yoga Sound System, which is a Tiny Islands event. So last year, as I mentioned, playing rugby, I broke my back and decided, right, time to retire from rugby. I'm not built for rugby, so I don't know why I was still playing mid-30s, but I decided to retire, and I had to do a lot of yoga as part of my recovery. And I had been working with a personal trainer to match music to fitness, and I said this is going to be perfect for yoga. So I actually started that back in, I think my first event was in March or April, I think it was. The first one I did, Yoga Sound System. And the interesting thing was I put it up, I started a Facebook page, put up the event, started inviting people to it, and then got contacted by multiple people about doing events. So we did Well Festival last weekend. We're booked in for Groove Festival. We might be doing Electric Picnic. And we've got our next event coming up next Friday as well, which is in this cool artist studio over in Northwall near Connolly Station. So this one's called Gloga. It's glow in the dark yoga. Okay. And we have a social element to it as well. So what I really want to do, and I think this will help a lot of rugby players as well, is get them more involved in the likes of yoga and Pilates, because we injure ourselves quite a lot playing rugby. Like the amount of broken bones, tight muscles, like slipped hips, everything I've got. I want people to be able to approach something like yoga, which some people feel quite intimidated by, with an element of fun. So introducing social yoga and music has actually gotten quite a lot of people into it. So the first event we did, we were quite surprised. We had a load of beginners and we had a huge amount of yoga teachers turn up to see what it was like. So that's another thing I want to do, is match music to fitness, to help create events that encourage more people to get into the likes of yoga and Pilates. And then finally, the next goal for Tiny Islands is the DJ competition that I mentioned. That's going to be coming up in October. So there's, I suppose there's a lot of people out there these days who say they're a DJ, you know, and they're not. And I even feel weird calling myself a DJ when I see someone like my brother who's just got, you know, a wealth of experience in the space, you know. But what I'd like to do is actually find people who are passionate about music, give them the right training and platform they need to excel. And you can actually use DJing as your profession. You can make quite a lot of money out of it if you know what to do. There's a lot of elements that need to be taught outside of the skill, so it's not just about perfect beat matching or mixing your tracks in key or knowing your harmonies, picking a really good set. These days, you got to know how to promote yourself. So I want to teach people about marketing, how to leverage social media to promote their brand, and even just the concept of a personal brand for people, because they can go on and make a career out of it. So that would be the ultimate goal. So working on themed events and experiences, fitness events, and then this DJ competition were the 3 goals for the Tiny Islands business.
Nice. Very diverse, which is good to see.
Bit of diversity, you know. Got to have a diverse portfolio, hedge your bets and all that sort of stuff, you know.
Exactly. And to cap it all off, if you think maybe 6 months' time or even a year's time, it depends on your perspective of what's long-term and short-term, what would your goals be for the future, both from a business point of view and also from maybe an individual point of view?
Yeah, so I know from a business point of view, I have a personal target of getting up to 1,000 clients by January for Flipdish. So that's a big goal. So I got to push the sales team quite hard to help achieve that goal. That's going to help us in our Series A round of investment as well, if we can achieve those targets. Now, they're very high targets, but the more we get clients on board, the higher our revenues grow, and the more we educate them about how they can leverage our solutions, the better their businesses are going to grow as well. So we do have the client at heart, because we really want those businesses to grow and succeed and leverage technology. The Tiny Islands goals, I've just mentioned them. I want to have sort of 1 to 2 themed events or cultural experiences set up before the end of the year. I've already set up the fitness events with Yoga Sound System, so I've ticked a few boxes there, and then the DJ competition as well, which will be happening in October. So those are my 3 main goals for that. I do, like I said, I do personal training as well, but that's more of a hobby at the moment. That's not a full business. So I'm teaching like 2 classes a week down with the guys at fitnessbootcamp.ie in Sandymount, which is great. But that's kind of like rugby training, because I do it every Tuesday and Thursday, so it keeps you in check. But they'd be my main goals: really establish the Flipdish brand on the map, not just in Ireland but abroad, and then really kickstart the Tiny Islands business in Ireland like it was in Australia.
Okay, very good. And last but not least is obviously Quickfire Questions.
Oh yeah,
so
okay, here we go. Pressure's on.
Prep yourself, and first thing that comes in, just say it. So just to kick it all off, what would your favourite app on your phone be?
Oh, Flipdish apps. Any one of them is just fantastic. Now, I'm all over Instagram and Snapchat. I'm like a teenage girl. It's ridiculous.
Okay, well, I think we're all guilty of doing that.
Fair enough,
you're not on your own there. What would your favourite social media site be?
Social media site, like, I'm old, so Facebook. Do you know what I mean? I'm still on there all the time. You know, I know a lot of people have migrated through to other ones, but yeah, Facebook.
And what was your favourite subject in school?
I loved art class with PJ Carroll. That was just the best. So much fun. Great teacher as well, if people had patience and listened to him. But yeah, PJ was the tops.
Okay. And what is your current favourite song? It can be a DJ hit if you want.
Disciples, Daylight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you rather be a teacher or a learner?
Teacher.
Okay.
Although I love learning, I love teaching. Like, I loved coaching in Michael's as well. Did that for a number of years. That was great. I love that.
Your favourite film?
Oh, so stereotypical, but like Shawshank Redemption. Just watched it so many bloody times. So yeah, love that.
Well, it is a good movie. It is stereotypical, but it is very good. So I don't think people can argue. And second last on the list is, who would you like to see as the next guest on this podcast?
That's God. There's so many interesting people from Michael's at the moment. I mean, I'd love to see my brother, just because he's done so much stuff in the music space, but I already know what he's done, so that's good. I would suggest speaking to someone like John, my brother, Paddy McKillen, who runs the Press Up Group, Ken Kennedy, who's done loads of stuff for the Legal and Finance Network. I think that's really interesting as well. I'll stick with those 3 for now, because I think those guys are all great and doing some fantastic things in areas that I'm really interested in. But God, if I thought about it, I'd come up with 10, 20 guys. Yeah.
Okay. And last but not least, sum yourself up in 1 sentence.
Big ball of energy.
Okay, super. Okay, well, anyway, Ronan, thanks a million for coming on. And listen, I wish you all the best with your future endeavours with Tiny Islands and Flipdish. And bear in mind that if I do order food online, the first thing I will check out is Flipdish. And
very good.
Hopefully it'll be efficient and an enjoyable experience. Which
it certainly will.
No doubt it will be. But,
absolutely.
No, listen, thanks a million. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks very much for having me on the show as well, Richie. These podcasts are absolutely fantastic. Seems to be a lot of people listening and really good positive feedback. So yeah, I can't wait to hear more of them. Okay. This will be awkward listening to me, because your voice always sounds weird when you listen to it back. But
just get other people to do it and it'll be fine.
Exactly.
Okay. Thanks a million, Ron.
Nice one. Thank you.